Hi everyone, this is Pablo again with a video series on weight loss, and this is video 4, how evolution expects us to eat. So let's think of our bodies as machines. You need to put fuel in to get energy out. So this is basically 2 million years of evolution, this yellow bar going from left to right. This is 2 million years ago, here's 1 million years, here's 500,000 years or half a million years, and then these 4 or 5 squares are 100,000 years each. So our machines, our body, these machines, which are our bodies, evolved over a time period of 2 million years. For 99.9% of those 2 million years, humans were hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers are basically you hunt, so you walk and run for miles every day, and you're tracking your animal that you're trying to hunt. And then when you do catch it and kill it, you eat that animal, such as venison, fowl, boars, and fish. So the other thing we did was we gathered and ate wild vegetables, nuts, and fruits and berries. But you got to keep in mind when it comes to fruits, that fruits were only available for a handful of weeks when they ripened. They weren't available year-round, so we really didn't get a lot of fruit and the sugar that comes in fruit. So it was a limited amount. And vegetables back in the Paleolithic era were actually vastly different from today's vegetables, what we find at the groceries or at the supermarket. They've been messed with completely to get more produce, basically bigger produce. So our bodies evolved to perform at their peak based on that 2 million years. We basically were designed over that 2 million year period to eat in the manner that we'd been eating for 99.9% of the day, of the time, which was we ate animals and we ate fruits and vegetables. So let's take a closer look at the last 10,000 years. If we see again the timeline here, this is 2 million years, we got 1,500,000 and so forth. And this last square here is the 100,000, the most recent 100,000 years. If we take that little square and blow it up into a bigger square here, now we got 100,000 years across. Here's the 50,000 year mark. And then down here, where it says 10,000 years ago, right here, farming begins. So we didn't start farming until that point in our history. Then 3,000 years later, which is 7,000 years ago, dairy is introduced into our diet. So we've only been eating farming produce and dairy for the last 10,000 and 7,000 years. If you go to the next little line, that's 2,500 years ago, sugar is introduced into our diets, right there. Prior to that point, only thing we ever ate that was sweet was honey. We would get a hold of honey and that was sweet. But other than that, periodically some ripened fruit. But in 2,500 years ago, we started eating sugar. 200 years ago, you can't even see the line because it's right up against the edge here. 200 years ago, modern white flour is introduced. So we've only been eating white flour and everything it produces for the last 200 years. So again, this is covering what I just talked about, but I want to in particular point out that 10,000 years ago when farming started, that's only 0.005% of our history with agriculture and farming. That brought us wheat, flour, bread, pasta into our diets. Dairy, again, 7,000 years ago was introduced, and only in the last 0.003% of our history. And then finally, sugar was only introduced into our diet 2,500 years ago, or in the last 0.001% of our history. And the last one is white flour. It was only developed 200 years ago, the last 0.0001% of our history. So but those weren't the only things different about our diets back then. For example, the frequency of eating was different. If you think about a hunter-gatherer, they were out chasing animals, and they might go days without catching and killing an animal to eat. So we didn't eat every day. We didn't eat 3 meals a day either. We would catch an animal and we would eat it, probably gorge ourselves with it, and then we might not eat for days or a week or more without any food actually available to us. So our bodies had no choice but to adapt to that. over that entire period of hunter-gatherer. So the bottom line is we ate in little chunks. We ate for maybe a day or two, and then we might go a week, days, or a week, or even longer without eating. So our body's adapted to that. That's what it's primed and geared to do. So when we feasted, it would store all excess food that we ate. It would store it as fat. And it does that by first turning all the food that we eat into glucose and then converting that to fat. And when there was a famine, our body would reverse that process. It would take the fat that was stored and metabolize it, and that would generate ketones, which we're going to talk about a lot later. But the key idea here is that when we had a lot of food to eat, we would store fat. When we didn't, we would go for days without eating. It would pull that fat and use it to give us energy. Our bodies have not adapted to eat 3 times a day in excess or high carbohydrate diets while living a sedentary life. So we got 3 things completely wrong here that we do today. We eat multiple times a day. We eat a lot every day. We eat every single day. So we're eating too much too often. We also eat very high carb foods, which again wasn't part of our diet, and for 99.9% of the time we were hunter-gatherers. And then we also now live a sedentary life. We don't walk all the time. We don't run all the time like we did for all that time period. So that also affects, obviously, how we gain weight. So now let's go on to video 5. We're going to learn why you gain weight by eating carbs and sugar and how glucose becomes fat. If you would like to follow this series, make sure you subscribe and click the little bell icon. And I'll see you in video 5.